Something new, do something better. A friend of mine passed along to me an old, out-of-print book entitled The Magic of a Name. It's about the beginnings of the Rolls-Royce automobile, written by Harold Nockels and first published in 1938. It makes interesting reading, but the point that underlies the story is the fact that the originator of the Rolls-Royce automobile, Henry Royce, was an indefatigable perfectionist. He didn't invent the automobile, he just wasn't happy with it. He thought it was too noisy, for one thing, and too heavy and inefficient. And so it happened that in Manchester, England, on April 1st, 1904, there came into being a motor car unlike any other that had been seen or heard before. As Harold Nockels put it, save for a gentle foot from its exhaust pipe, it made no noise at all. There was no clatter from the engine, no grinding from the gears and back axle, and this comparative silence in the days when the noise of a motor car had been likened with deadly accuracy to an avalanche of tea trays was something indeed to marvel at. At the wheel of this miraculous machine sat a bearded figure of some 40 years of age, whose piercing eyes were lit with a gleam of triumphant concentration. It was Henry Royce, later called Sir Henry, the perfectionist. The trade name Rolls-Royce went to become synonymous with anything excellent or outstanding. The Spitfires of the Battle of Britain in 1940, which had Rolls-Royce engines, were a big factor in winning that war. In fact, there's a beautiful stained glass memorial window at the Rolls-Royce aircraft engine plant commemorating the pilots of the Royal Air Force, and it reads, "Who in the Battle of Britain turned the work of our hands into the salvation of our country." But the point I want to make is that to become successful and outstanding at something, we don't have to come up with something new. We need only find ways of doing it better. If you'll think about it, it's the key element in virtually all success stories. Hilton hotels, Holiday Inns, Kentucky Fried Chicken, the list is endless. If you want to succeed at something, just do it better. Henry Royce was so wrapped up in the business of producing a superior automobile, he would forget to eat for days at a time and sleep on a bench in the foundry. A boy was hired to follow him around with a glass of milk and some bread so he wouldn't get sick from malnutrition. He once heard a mechanic make the statement, "Okay, that's good enough," and they almost had to tie Royce down. Nothing was good enough for him, and his name and the name of his salesman distributor partner, C.S. Rolls, is a symbol of quality. It's the same in every field, advertising to zinnia growing. Give it the kind of study and all-out dedication that Royce gave to his cars, and your name will someday stand like some of those I listed earlier. I remember reading a few years ago about a Canadian farmer who sold his Stradivarius violin for, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of $460,000. They're worth much more than that now. He sold it back to the same New York City dealer he'd bought it from many years before, and for the same price. The farmer sold his precious violin by the world's most famous violin craftsman because, as he put it, "I'm getting old, and I have no children to leave it to." By getting it back into the hands of the dealer, he knew that it would get into the hands of someone who would treasure it as he had. Antonio Stradivari, the Italian violin maker, lived from 1644 to 1737. That's 93 years, a remarkable lifespan at a time when the average life expectancy was perhaps about 30. He lived for his work, and his work has lived on ever since. He worked alone, although later in life his sons helped him. His tools were rather primitive by our standards, but that was not important. He put himself and his genius into his work, and his instruments sang with a power and poignancy, a purity that, in the hands of fine violinists, delighted all who heard them. When he was finished with an instrument, he was sure that it was up to his personal standards. He signed his name to it. And still today, nearly 250 years later, his name is famous the world over, and the fine instruments still are delighting millions. Throughout history, there have been many with similar standards of excellence in many fields, artists such as William Shakespeare and Leonardo da Vinci, craftsmen such as furniture maker Thomas Chippendale and silversmith Paul Revere. Everything they did was done exceptionally well, not because there was any pressure other than their own insistence on excellence beyond the reach of others of their time. A good violinist can give you the names of other violin makers who are great and whose instruments are cherished, and it's the same in all fields. There are many thousands of craftsmen and women who will not turn out shoddy or even ordinary work, and who would be glad to sign their names to their work. The respect for excellence never changes. It still commands the highest price. It is still revered wherever we find it. And the people performing the work have gained for themselves two precious assets. They have gained the kind of security that lasts a lifetime, of course. They never need worry about income. There's always a ready market for the best. And two, their work is a source of satisfaction and joy to them. They derive deep satisfaction from being uncommon people, turning out uncommonly fine products or services. Would you be willing to sign your name to what you do? I think most of us would. Our work, after all, is a kind of mirror of ourselves. This is just a great reinforcement of the need to do everything as best you can. And at the end, like they say here, everything's going to fall into place that allows you to benefit from that. You don't need to worry about the money. You don't need to worry about the time or if it's right for you, as long as you know and feel it's right for you. And then putting your all into it, putting your entire spirit into your work will always turn out the dividends you've been looking for anyway. So today, do that. Go into your work and put everything you can into it. Be that Rolls Royce, and put excellence into everything you do, and watch how, you get returned the same. All right. Have an amazing morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me if you're here. We'll talk to you tomorrow.